Good day, folks. Today is about the Indian economy. Are there any silver linings to the otherwise dark cloud, or is it, like I said, the light at the end of the tunnel, or a freight train coming down at Mach 1 speed? My call, Mach 1 speed, freight train, better be ready for the hit, right? And all this, why I say this is that the canary in the coal mine's been singing loud and clear. That's the way the U.S. Dollar's been strengthening as most currencies, also including India. And the second is just underlying problems with our external economy that are quite fundamentally very strong, which is leading to kind of major disruptions in our exchange rate and causing all kinds of problems. So the way I see it is the US dollar. So somebody came out and said, see, what's happened with, you got to remember the US dollar is strengthening because of just fundamental weakness in the Indian economy and globally, right? Including that of China. And the demand for dollars being very high in India because of the import requirement. And the supply, if people have not noticed, has been dwindling in the United States, has been coming down since 2020, mid-2022, right? The dollar strength has also put paid to all this great talk about this BRICS currency and this BRICS currency. BRICS currency is not going to happen because India doesn't want a BRICS currency. What India wants is to trade in its own currency, the rupee, which nobody, I mean, barring us paying for the oil, the Russian oil with rupees, which the Russians now say is useless, they can't really do anything with it. Nobody wants to trade in the rupee, right? Similarly, the BRICS currency at this point of time doesn't seem to be a possibility, because as soon as Brazil announced, firstly Argentina dropped out, Saudi Arabia didn't join the expanded BRICS. The only people who joined the expanded BRICS was Iran, Ethiopia, I think. I think Iran and Ethiopia are probably two of the big ones, right? And what's happened is, ever since the announcement, the yuan has dropped 2 to 3%. Indian rupee has dropped over 10%. You have the real, which is the Brazilian currency, which has dropped almost 20%. So the only one holding its fort is what's it called? Is the South African rand. So when you're having this kind of weakness, you really can't really have a currency that's going to come up and displace the US dollar, right? The other thing is, as a trading bloc, is this going to ever be a reality? Think about it, right? You have the Chinese economy, which is like, I mean, larger than most, I think, more or less the four balanced combined GDPs. Then look at the mix of, like I've always said, look at the mix of exports and imports. Russia, Brazil, basically export primary goods. And the basic market is China. China hogs this up to create finished products, right? China supplies finished products of choice to, whether it is the Middle East, whether it is to Brazil, whether it's to Russia. India is stuck. India wants to export finished products, not primary products. And it has no market. Russia won't buy it. China won't buy it. Brazil won't buy it. South Africa won't buy it. The only people buying Indian finished products are, unfortunately, which are not part of the BRICS, are the United States and Europe. So once you see that reality, you got to get your bells ringing, right? Khatre ki Ghanti ringing. All the guys who keep propagating BRICS. I'm not sure what they propagate BRICS for. China ain't going to buy anything from here, right? Knives and forks and whatever else. We seem to be buying everything that's on the from China, right? And so is the rest of the world, right? Then there's another guy who comes up, and he's created this scenario for the whole year, global geostrategy. But if he doesn't pick up on the US economy, money supply, he ain't in a position to tell us what's going to happen to the interest rates. He's not in a position to tell us whether FIIs are going to flood suddenly into India. Why would they flood suddenly into India? There is fundamental economy being so weak. Anyway, even if they do flood it, that's fast and hot money. It can leave as quickly as it's come in, right? What India needs is FDI. FII, unfortunately, inflows lead to a rupee being stronger relative to the other exporting countries, which makes our exports expensive. And that's what's causing the problem with our exports, right? We are relatively more expensive, even though the rupee has declined. It's not declined as much because we've had FII inflows, right? So FII inflows is not a big thing, guy. I don't know what his name is. It's not the best thing, right? Stock markets are primarily responsible for this huge discrimination in wealth between gap in wealth between the rich and the poor. And we really don't need any more of that in 2025. FDI and exports is what you need. If you can tell me you can get me FDI and exports 2025, then it could be the light at the end of the tunnel. But as we see this, like I told you, rupee falls to record 85.77 versus dollar. Forex kitty at 8-month low. Sensex falls 721 points on FPI selling. Rupee touches another low ends at 85.64.5. Rupee hits new low of 85.80, biggest one-day fall in 2 years. Forex reserves shrink to nearly 6-month low. Rupee skids sharply before RBI applies brakes. Right? And then you have Somnath Mukherjee said, rupee dollar do their own dance. There is no own dance, Mr. Mukherjee. There is no own dance. We are just playing a Pied Piper's dream, the rupee is, right? We are fundamentally as an economy not that strong, and that really is the problem. Even though when you have these small articles with Goyal says India's exports to cross 800 billion in FY25, says Goyal. Now, if this was such a big item, it should be the front page. But it's a small item. But we're never going to get there. It's another one of the jumla that came through. Because slowdown after festivals may hurt Q3 growth. Economists, geopolitical risks, do they matter? Of course they matter. Geopolitical risks matter, as also domestic problems which are mushrooming across the countries. Like it's suddenly becoming a land of many mutinies, as was a book earlier. Geopolitical risks, Middle East, as you see, that war is going to continue. Russia and Ukraine, I think, also will not really be able to come on the same table, right? Will Trump be able to do anything? But let me just tell you something about Trump. There are people who have such big hopes on Trump. Trump, this term is only about himself because he is a lame duck president. When I say the lame duck president, he's not eligible for re-election. In that case, a lot of the people around him, his senators and his house, who have to fight for their own seats, especially now with the MAGA war, which has destroyed, one of his biggest promises on H1, are going to come to the fore, right? And not get him to do very much else, right? And look at India. India, on the other hand, like I said, domestic, farmers in trouble. Bandh a success, says farmer SC to take up case today. Mob lynches, Moradabad man over cow slaughter allegations. Why farmers are agitated again? He says price guarantees, higher wages, seeking change in policies that favor corporates. And then I think they're right? I don't think corporates are going to do a very good job. The concept of an unregulated market operating independently of GOI's oversight frequently engenders issues such as uncertainty, collusion, quality control, information asymmetry, and potential abuse of non-economic power. The factors can contribute to various forms of market failure, highlighting the importance of regulatory frameworks to mitigate such risks. That's why the farmers are up in arms, right? And then you have this, the youth are in trouble, right? Bihar exam stir intensifies as protesters block trains and roads. And our army, I'm not sure where it's going. One, we suddenly see, I just saw this, I think it's true, is I've got nothing against going and visiting the shivling and putting milk all over it, but to make this a public event, Rajnath and the chief of CDS, I don't know. And that's where I'm going. Army installed Shivaji statue on Pangong Lake, Bang Ladakh councillor. Other question is relevant. Yeah, right after we install this lovely statue, because we really can't fight the Chinese, so we're going to let the statue fight. Right after that, China goes ahead and creates new counties, and all we are doing is shouting, oh. Like, where's our bravado, man, right? And here, the one thing that they were really shouting and screaming, Nita Sarita Ramana, GST. GST is a fallacy. GST is just robbing the poor and middle class to enrich and the government. So, GST collection growth slows in December. Amid weak urban demand, worry, GST kitty rises 7. So, this is how it goes. GST collection growth slows in December, but how you project everything is okay is this. Amid weak urban demand, worry, GST kitty rises 7.3%. And then you say net and Hindu writes it rightly. Net GST growth slumps to 3.3% in December as revenues drop and refunds rise 45% and losing momentum. You got to hear this, right? This is losing momentum. GST receipts and other recent indicators suggest consumption is still a concern. Bank credit growth has slowed for the fifth straight month in November, while core infrastructure sectors, about 40% of industrial output, expand at 4-month high prices of 4.3%. However, production levels are 3.3% below October, with 6 of 8 sectors operating at lower capacities. The Purchasing Managers Index shows factory activity levels through November and December were the worst through 2024, even as input cost inflation spurred price hikes that would hit demand somewhat over time. The GST receipts for December based on transactions concluded in November do not have much succor to offer either, especially on the consumption engine of the economy. Gross revenues were at a 3-month low of almost 1.77 lakh crore and just 7.3% higher than last year, marking the joint second slowest uptick in 3.5 years. December's revenue, in fact, marked the 4th straight month of below 10% growth, with the pace deaccelerating every passing month, and the year-to-date rise in revenues is now just 8.6%, making the 11% growth estimate in the budget a tall task to catch up with the final quarter. Net revenues after refunds were 3.3%, the slowest this fiscal, although this may partly be explained by high refund payouts of December. But things are in trouble. Even the GST and the stock market, as they were saying, the two things that they talked about, in trouble. And why GST is a problem, right, is this. 3 tax rates for popcorn, one big problem from India. The storm in a snack bucket over GST rates on a munchie shows governments are still in the old mindset that sees whatever that's fun or quality as sinful. We can't become a rich country like this. So this is Sita Raman trying to explain that as long as popcorn, get this, as long as the popcorn is salty, it's at 5%. The moment it gets caramelized and gets sweet, it's sin. You figure this out. As Anil Padmanabhan, right, goes the economics. The public face-offs on GST decisions point to flaws in the tax architecture and implementation. They absolutely do. And T.K. Arun writes, ghosts of Christmas past, GOI's repeated actions seem bent on violating the basic tenet of taxation, simplicity. He's making it complicated. Household balance sheet stress is also K-shaped, reckons Nomura. Factory activity at 12-month low. Eco slowdown, seasonal need, private capex is SBI chief, which is not coming because, as I said in the first article, the bank credit is the slowest. Car sales growth slowest in 4 years. A 10% decline, and yet India is more expensive than EM peers. This is what I said. 10%. So, at 12,120,598 crore, FPI selling makes 24nd worst year in a decade. Sensex tanks nearly 1,000 points on US Fed's cautious stance. Sensex tanks 4,000 points in week on sign of slower US rate cuts. Now, US rate cuts, when tied in, so there were expectations that the US will cut rates sharper, and that's why there was a point of time in September where currencies did appreciate, especially the real and the ruble and the yuan. But eventually, when they found out that's not happening, back collapsed. And what does columnist Ruchir Sharma write? Will the bell toll for Wall Street? America is starting to look like Japan that was bogged down under a pile of government debt. All signs suggest the party's end is near. It's time to bet against American exceptionalism. And if you bet against American exceptionalism, then the rest of the world is toast. China is, if you can't bet on China, China is got a interest rates at 0.56 going down to 0. Is dumping goods globally. It's hurting our steel factories because it's dumping steel at unreal prices, right? China's finance reality workforce shrinks first time in over 5 years. Beijing raises, well then, okay. And this is what I said. This is what's happening in the United States. Even Indian American Republicans feel MAGA heat over H-1B. Trump backs Musk and H-1B visas amid MAGA meltdown. MAGA at war over Indians, that Seema Sirohi writes, and see what she says. Fights broke out even before the party started. It's day 6 on the MAGA battlefield and the Indian blood's everywhere. So Indians are a target. Remembering the impact of legacy, Santosh Mehrotra writes, and you've got to remember, when you're going to go through these difficult times, you've got to remember Manmohan Singh. He says, After 2015, not one of the life-changing transformations in the life of ordinary Indians has sustained. So we made all these changes in their 10 years and none of them are sustained. And what does this guy write? Shashi Shekhar, Prime Minister who let his actions speak. He says Manmohan Singh was a man of few words and he uttered these precious words very softly. Opponents used this to paint him as weak, but there are enough instances to the contrary. Future generations will remember Manmohan Singh as a visionary PM who not only dreamt of a developed India in the 21st century, but paved the path to this in the last decade of the 20th century. And Kaushik Basu writes, Liberalization and liberalism, legacy of Manmohan Singh. The unexpected eruption of nostalgia and admiration for Manmohan Singh from people across the country as testimony to what he stood for. Because of his modesty and refusal to run banner headlines about his achievement, it was easy to overlook his contribution. Now, with his passing and in hindsight, it is becoming clear how lucky India was to have a leader like him. And the bucks are going ballistic, right? Q2, a temporary blip, no production slump. So Sitaraman continues to fob off life. So expect this quarter to have delusional numbers being thrown at you. But you got to look inside the newspapers to find out the reality. And like I said, the Khatre ki Ghanti, the reality is your rupee-dollar rate trade. 1677 per capita consumption spend of bottom 5% of rural India in a month. FMCG companies bet on premium trend amid demand slump. So demand slump. And what does Shankar Das write? We find ourselves in a slow growth, high inflation scenario. Inflation largely due to food prices, which have rather high weight in the sea. But it's irrespective whether it's high weight or not. You can't jiggle with this. The reason is that if I have 1,000 rupees income, there's no demand. Right? That's the whole problem. CGI and I minus E. If you look at the GDP, consumption is collapsing because of high prices and high GST and lack of money, right? And unemployment. Government has stopped spending now because it doesn't have the money. Investment, as we all know, bank credit is the slowest ever. And our external, our E minus I, our external fundamentals are extremely poor. Exports are way below and imports are just growing at a really fast pace, right? Small pack flood shelves as rural India defies slum. The other way to look at it is that's the only thing they can buy is small packs. I think that's the reality, which means they are worse off. Healthcare costs surge, push up medical cover rates, and when that happens, a normal man has a problem. Net formal jobs under EPFO dipped to 5-month low in October. So everything is sinking. High limits in unsecured lending a worry, says RBI. NBFC loan sanctions down 13% in Q2. NPAs may go up by 26%, write-off signal stress. All this is what is Khatre ki Ghantis in the middle pages, right? When you have obviously revival of 7 to 8% growth in focus at pre-budget meet Sitaraman and Modi, but that's never going to happen as long as this continues. Bank fraud jumped 8 times in first half of FY25. Mend ways or face more curbs RBI to banks and NBFCs. IndusInd looks to sell 1,500 crores microfin NPAs. FinMin RBI policies may have contributed to eco slowdown. Eco slowdown is contributed because of no demand, which is because of no employment. Fundamental problem. BSE 500 companies hold 99,000 crore in cash and cash equivalents. Time for bumper dividends? Absolutely not. If the country has to grow, they got to invest. Why are they not investing? FNO rollovers hint at a bearish Jan. RBI flags unsecured loan caps private credit links. But look at the small article that came out long time ago, August 18. Need to address the $4 trillion financing gap, says Sitaraman. And this whole news just vanished. It's not even playing out, right? That's a huge sum, $4 trillion, right? Feb rate cut hinges on new RBI leadership MPC minutes show, and as RBI frowns fintechs pivot to secured loans, liquidity rise up may stay so for some days, call rates rise. This is happening everywhere. Ambani and Adani drop out of 100 billion club. Wow. India's highest tariff major economy, says the US ambassador to India. So we have problems. Buy more US oil or face tariffs, Trump warns EU, and he's going to do the same with us. Employment, like I said, in trouble. 16 Indian workers trapped in Libya factory await government help. Sare jahan se acha se Sanjay Chamaria. More and more wealthy Indians are moving out of the country for a better quality of life. Let's fix it. Are you going to be able to fix it in this hostile environment? Internal? Probably never. India maps industrial park route to turn factory giant. This hopefully should not turn into another scam. I'll tell you of another great scam that's happening. I've been hearing this regularly. This guy comes out in Hindi, some acharya, and names every cancer. Muh ka cancer, dil ka, kidney cancer, sub cancer. And usko jad se mazboot karo, and he's hawking Ayurvedic things, right? And apparently all these Ayurvedic things are covered by all the government insurance companies. And unbelievable, right? And he's got 100 centers. What are we doing? We are leading people up into the deep end, right? India should focus on education, economic freedom, says World Bank. As long as that doesn't happen, nothing is going to change. And then you have this agri-export policy to get a makeover. What that means, nobody knows, right? Nobody really knows. So when we go here, India has a lot more scope to pursue progressive capitalism, is what everybody's talking about, equality of income and wealth. This is Joseph Stiglitz. He says, to me, when I visit India, I see the scope for a lot of larger role for government to create a better society, which is not happening. Creating employment in the long run. This is Gowda and Satyawali. He says, instead of nudging the government, instead of nudges, the government should have relied on a comprehensive economic package for a long-term investment plan in essential public services. Absolutely. Don't go, it's wasteland. It's wasteland, right? Rashmi Roshan, he says, next year we'll see a decade-long anti-immigration sentiment in US and Europe get full play. Never mind, only around 4% of world population immigrants. Never mind sensible immigration solution. That's the MAGA war that's happening in the United States, as you saw. Then you have this, a ground plan for sustainable mass employment. He says, first, begin from below through decentralized community action. Second, coverage initiatives for education, health, skill, nutrition. Third, introduce need-based vocational courses. Fourth, standardize nursing and allied health professional courses. Let me know about this vocational courses. So many centers have opened up, taken government money, but I went and visited them because we had some demand, and there is nobody there. They're just open. It's another huge scam, right? Fifth, create community cadres of caregivers. Sixth, invest in industrial training institutes. Seventh, introduce enterprise and startup skills. Eighth, have a course-sharing model of apprentices with industry. Ninth, streamline working capital loans. 10th, after a universal skill accreditation program for skill providing institution, let the state and industry joint sponsor candidates. Use 70% of Manrega in water scarce blocks. 12th, apprenticeships on scale can facilitate the absorption of youth in a workplace. Right? Can India escape middle income trap? I personally think we can't, right? And the World Development Report authored by the World Bank calls attention to the phenomena of the middle income trap or the slowing down of growth rates as incomes increase. World Bank estimates a stagnation of income per capita when economies reach a level of per capita income 11% of that US, hindering their journey to high income status. Over the last 34 years, only 34 middle income countries, middle income economies defined as economies with a per capita income of 1,136 and 13,845. And that's why both us and China are middle income. Right? It highlights the importance of 3I approach: investment, infusion, and innovation economies. Just invest, ensure the infusion of new global technologies, and develop an environment conducive to domestic innovation. This is no easy task and requires nimble and responsive state policy. In the modern economy, there are plenty of headwinds that India must overcome to successfully navigate the middle income trap. Unfortunately, we don't have either the skill set or the talent to do that. Sorry, I'm bearer of bad news. I am Dr. Doom and Gloom for 2025. It's a tough year for the world, and it's going to be a tough year for the globe. And India especially. We may be strong macroeconomically, but microeconomically, we are extremely weak with massive unemployment and massive drop in consumption. 3 cheers, Jai Hind.